So John, get ready for
We're here at the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice in San Francisco, and you are listening to KPFA.org. You're also seeing us. With me is Dennis Bernstein. I'm Sharon Peterson.
And maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you're doing here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Annalisa Freitas, and I'm the campaign coordinator with People's Climate Movement. And we're here because San Francisco is holding down our anchor action for the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice national mobilization. It's happening here in the U.S., but there's also many actions that are also happening globally as well.
Let me ask you, what's at the core for you? Why are you here? Why do you think this is an emergency?
Oh, it's absolutely beyond emergency, and I think it's been that way for some time because of the fact that, again, in our movement work, this is affecting people from not just those that have been fighting around environmental advocacy for some time, but it's actually been a really diverse movement of partners across the labor movement, faith movements, youth and student movements. There's been a lot of groups that have come together, and of course our indigenous and front and fence line communities who are leading the march today in San Francisco have already been experiencing tons of life-endangering and actual death counts in their respective home areas across the country, and particularly when we're talking about an area like the California coast. It looks like many people are already facing a huge amount of flooding, fires. The extremities of the weather that is happening is also affecting people going to school. We're seeing that now at this time. It's become impossible pretty much for folks to live and to actually imagine a future where they can have a steady job, have a home that's not going to be in danger, and be able to have children, be able to enjoy life as well. It's now becoming, I think, a daily warning where we're seeing issues with air, with weather, with transportation even. It feels beyond control at this point, and that's why we've brought together this really broad coalition.
So what actions or policies does the movement coordinate and
Sure, yeah.
perform?
People's Climate Movement has been a really awesome project because we've been able to be a convener of many viewpoints and many sectors. So our foundation has always been around what is most important to these partners. And several of those platform points are, of course, a transition that is just, being able to provide workers for real jobs that are going to provide benefits. They're going to provide them the right to unionize, that will bring family-sustaining wages. When it comes to energy, we are fighting for 100% clean and renewable energy, and that transition needs to happen on a rapid timeline. Many of our localized advocacy this year is going to be based around what's happening in the various cities and states where we have major actions happening. Miami has a really great action happening today. Actually on Thursday, New York kicked us off with a really awesome action as well. We've been really fortunate and excited to be able to be the platform and kind of the main foundation, and allowing local communities to then make it more detailed and specific based on what's most important for their local coalition and community.
So how can people connect with the movement, especially here locally?
Sure, yeah. I think wherever you are, it's been really awesome to see so much online activism. We actually have a really great website, peoplesclimate.org. We have a Take Action section where we're actually asking folks to volunteer now, because this day of action, this Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice mobilization is not just the only moment that we're all working for. There's many groups that as well are looking towards how we're building political power and how we're going to then make our voices heard at the midterm elections in November. So we're really asking folks to sign up, volunteer with us. We'll plug you into local campaigns that our partners are supporting on the ground. Peoplesclimate.org is the best way to do that. And you can also take a look at all our social media channels. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and there are links in our bios there that'll take you directly to the direct action page where you can sign up.
And I wanted to add one follow-up. What do you see the special role that young people can play, and why are they so important in this movement?
Young people in this movement are extremely important for many reasons. I think one of the most compelling reasons right now is that there is a sense of, as I mentioned before, that we are at a moment where it's not just we're getting close to a breaking point, but the point has broken, that there isn't any more time to waste. I think people are really, really scared about what the future will hold, and so people are bringing an intense sense of urgency, an intense sense of fearlessness. I think these folks are not waiting for elected leaders to do all the work. We're building our own solutions. We're pushing to make sure that that leadership is represented in a diverse way. So I think what the young people bring to the climate movement and to the people's climate movement in general is this sense of impatience that's way, way, way welcome. We need that urgency, we need the energy, and we need bold leadership that's going to move us into a new energy future.
Thank you.
Once again, we are at the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice March, the rally venue in San Francisco. We're coming at you live on KPFA.org. And we've been speaking to Annalisa Freitas, People's Climate Movement.
Thanks.
All right, and let's see if we can get Andres. I think Andres Soto has just showed up. Do you want to step in here? And Andres has been a main a main player in the Bay Area in terms of fighting for the environment. Andreas, good to see you here. Welcome, and tell us what the hell you're doing here.
Well, my day gig is I'm a Richmond organizer for Communities for a Better Environment, and so the entire CBE organization, both Southern California and Northern California, we got together as a single contingent with our allies in Richmond in the Our Power Coalition, and so we're representing Richmond out here today and the larger CBE organization, and we're here to bring out that Jerry Brown is a climate fraud, and that it's
talk about that. Climate fraud, isn't that an exaggeration? Is it?
Oh, absolutely not. Jerry Brown has tried to position himself as the climate alternative to Donald Trump. Well, that's a pretty low bar. And what we have seen here, especially with Jerry Brown being a promoter of the notion of cap and trade, which allows the oil companies to turn pollution into a commodity that then gets traded. It's a capitalist scam, and what ends up happening is the refineries never really reduce their emissions because they can buy their way out of their pollution. What that means is that not only are they putting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which destroys the planet's atmosphere, but the fallout from the refineries is increased, and that damages the health of frontline communities like Richmond.
All right, well, Dennis Bernstein here. I'm going to step away from the mic, welcoming in Andreas. And there's a bunch of guests. Maybe you want to pick it up from here?
Yeah, sure. I believe we have Amelia here, Real Sola, Amelia, and Stephanie Rodriguez. Is Stephanie here, or is it just going to be Amelia? Okay. We're doing a little bit of logistical shifting here, but just like to remind you, this is KPFA 94.1 FM or KPFA.org, and we're live at the People's Climate March right down here in the San Francisco Civic Center Plaza. The march is just ending and or just arriving at the plaza, so if you haven't gotten here yet, you still have time to get here and celebrate with everybody here. And so I'd like to welcome both Amelia Realzola and Stephanie Rodriguez here to KPFA. Bienvenidos, welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
All right. So you guys are from the Central Coast of California, and your group is called cause.org?
It's just Cause.
Cause. Okay, Cause. Okay, so what brings you guys here today, and how did you organize yourself to get here?
Well, I think we're here mostly to tell, the story about how climate change affects, our community, and in particular, because the Thomas fires, I know you heard about Thomas fires, right? Yeah. We were really affected by it because of the, we had a lot of undocumented farm workers and a lot of people just undocumented that were working or lost their homes.
Right.
And because of that fact, they weren't able to get FEMA, so they weren't able to get aid. So Ka'aza and my KPFA, they were able to raise about $1 million for them to be able to receive financial assistance. You know, and that's a really important thing to us because, you know, they just because they're undocumented, it doesn't mean they have to have the same rights as everybody else, you know?
Well, FEMA is engaging in legalized discrimination.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
It's authorized discrimination against people who are living in our community, contributing to our community, and suffering in our community. And, you know, unfortunately, we have to stand up and fight for them. So I'm so glad you guys are here. Tell us a little bit more about what this ties in, that fire ties into climate change and why you're here.
So, like Steph said, the Thomas fires did severely affect our community because Oxnard, where we're from, is 85%, you know, Latino, Spanish-speaking people of color. And so a lot of major corporations like NRG and other really big, you know, corporations that have a big title and stuff think that they can exploit us because of that fact. They think that because we are predominantly, you know, Spanish-speaking, immigrant, farm workers, that they can literally do anything to us and expect no resistance, right? And another really big thing was the power plant. There was talk of building a 4th power plant in Oxnard, our Oxnard beaches, right? Oxnard, that is one of the cities with the highest asthma rates in California. And there was talk of constructing a 4th one, which would not only, you know, pollute our beaches.
And what fuel would they use in that power plant?
It was nuclear. It was a nuclear power plant. Yeah. And so there was talk of constructing a 4th one, right? But the thing, so they would end up, you know, polluting our beaches. They would, whatever resources they built there wouldn't even like stay in Oxnard. They would transport that energy created and basically transport them to wealthier and less diverse areas, right?
So you take the risk and they get the benefit.
Exactly. And
So how can we best, you know, we're here in the Bay Area today, and I'm listening to your story. I really want to help or have our listeners know how they can help your cause.
You know, I think, you know, just stay, you know, like, be aware of the laws that are passing and any law that benefits, you know, minority groups and like that is for, you know, that they believe in climate change. People should vote on it and elect people in Congress who will act on it and not just sit around, because we need people in Congress who are for the people and not for corporations.
Right.
So I think that's a big thing. And also bouncing off back what Emilia said, in Santa Paula, it's a neighboring city, they were also trying to build a power plant there. So that they were trying to build one there and another 4th one in Oxnard. So and Santa Paula is predominantly Latino farm workers. It's almost, population is almost like Oxnard, but just a little, the population is just smaller. But, you know, they're Latinos and they're farm workers and undocumented, and that's why they're trying, you know, they think they can take advantage also, like Oxnard.
So I think the best thing that you can do is keep an eye out for, you know, immigrant populations and be the voice of those who are scared and are therefore, because of the fear, voiceless, and just do anything you can to, you know, support La Raza and support your local farm workers.
Well, I think one of the things also is that all of us are at risk. I'm from Richmond, where we have the Chevron refinery, and it's the beginning of the refinery corridor. But what we all have in common is the fact that it's the extractive economy, the older economy, that's injuring our communities. And we all need to work together to move the entire economy to a renewable energy economy, keep the fossil fuels in the ground.
Yeah,
because, I mean, what you're talking about is local political exploitation with health impacts, just like our community, just like in Oakland, where they want to put the coal terminal. They already have excessive truck traffic. They have the worst asthma rates in the entire Bay Area in West Oakland. So all these things we have in common, and if we keep in touch with these kind of rallies and support each other's causes, that's how we're going to move forward together.
So basically what we have to do then, to sum up, is to keep track of legislation.
Yes.
Yes.
And promote progressive candidates. Maybe we can add to that, keep on them, keep their feet to the fire after they're elected.
Well,
I'm so sorry. it'll take some time when it comes to big projects like that, because the power plant, like shutting down the construction of the fourth power plant took 4 years, but you have to be persistent. There's always power in numbers, and just keep going at it. Keep telling them we're not backing down. We're here to stay. We're telling you that we don't want this in our city, and you need to listen to us. And eventually your word's going to get to them, and they'll get it, and they.
Well, one thing is that we also have to be proactive. So, for example, like I said earlier, CBE is part of an Our Power coalition in Richmond. And one of the things we're just introducing is our own energy policy, where the city of Richmond would establish its own energy commission, whose first task would be to develop an energy master plan so that we don't get private corporations coming in and installing, for example, electric vehicle charging stations, then they make the money off it. That is a public resource that we need to keep within the people's purses, so that we in the community, when we build out new solar farms in, for example, brownfields, because we have a long legacy of industrial pollution that we want to see ourselves guiding our own future. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And you are listening to KPFA.org. You're also seeing us. And we are at the Rise for Climate, Jobs and Justice March and Rally Point in San Francisco.
Talk about where we are. Still not. Talk about where we are.
So right now we're just starting to fill up. The marchers are slowly filing in, and we're awaiting our next guest.
All right.
And it is. We've got we at KPFA have the best seat in the house, and this is a. Yes, and we are shuffling around, and our guests are arriving. And once again, we are First Voice Apprenticeship Program with Andre Soto. We are at the Rise for Climate, Jobs and Justice March and Rally in San Francisco, coming at you live on KPFA.org.
And we'd like to welcome a couple of new guests here. We have Aretha Warmsleeve and Tracy Belpre. Welcome both of you here to the live broadcast at the People's Climate March. And so you guys are from South LA. You came a long way to be here. Why was this so important for you to be here?
It was important for us to really represent our community of South Central LA. We're a community that is black and brown, burdened by a lot of the pollution, a lot of the inequality that exists when it comes to climate, when it comes to jobs, health, and access to a lot of services. So it was important to be here today to really uplift our voice. And it's time for change and to really prioritize our communities first when we are thinking about a just economy.
And what brings you here to be in San Francisco today and that long journey from South LA?
Well, I'm also fighting for climate change. In my community, I've lived there for 30 years in South LA. So it's a lack of green jobs in our community. I know that we cannot continue to live with unclean water, pollution that goes on in our community. So we really need those jobs. Low-income people that are not able to normally get those jobs. We're fighting for those in our community, and I've waited a long time to see that,
Yeah. So I guess, one of the things that is the purpose of this march and the Week of Actions is to understand that Jerry Brown and his Global Climate Summit is not providing the real solutions that will impact our communities. And I think you guys were just alluding to that we at the local level are the ones who know our communities best and know what kind of solutions we want to see that will benefit our community members. So what kind of thinking are you guys doing down in South Central LA about turning your economy around? What are some of the thoughts people are coming up with?
So locally right now we have work that we're doing around ending neighborhood oil drilling. So there's a couple of sites in South LA and also in Wilmington that are directly next to homes. A lot of our members have experienced like cancer, or like asthma, a lot of these health issues, and it's time to shut down these sites and really think about what can community really, to lead with community and on what we want to see at these sites. So that's one of our battles, is to really create a 2,500-foot buffer around these sites.
And have you guys had any discussions yet about refinery decommissioning, finally shutting down these refineries? Have you guys engaged in that dialogue yet?
Not refineries specifically, more of the neighborhood drilling that exists in our communities. So it's these smaller sites that are not really benefiting the community, are hurting it more, and we just want to see community gardens or affordable housing. We want to see access to job centers, access to community centers, which is what folks that are living next to these sites want to see.
You know, California is the only petrostate in the United States that does not have an oil extraction tax, meaning that when the oil is taken out of the ground, that there's a tax on that. And Jerry Brown has opposed that, and that's money that could go into the state to help mitigate, help finance some of the shifting of this economy. What does that make you think about his governance when you hear that he's, for example, he won't sign a bill to ban fracking, and he won't sign a bill that will have this extraction tax?
So I think I could.
Sure, go ahead.
He's not prioritizing our communities. He's not really prioritizing solutions that can actually mitigate the changes of climate. And that's why it's really important for us to really uplift our solutions so that we can see the changes that we want to see.
And they also need to prioritize investing in training programs.
Job training
programs for the disadvantaged, people that normally would not be able to get a job. They create those green jobs. It will get opportunities for everyone to be able to work.
So you're saying in your community there's no job training for solar installation or that kind of thing?
Very minimal. I haven't seen it. I'm not saying it's not anywhere, but where I live in South LA, it's very important that they're able to get those jobs.
Yeah. Are the jobs out there? Is it a matter of having to force your electeds to bring in those jobs before you can even have the training?
Yeah, of course you're going to have to go to your elected officials, but it's also us getting out here doing what we do, canvassing, bringing awareness, and letting everybody know. Because together, if we band together, this will happen. And I've been doing this for a little while now, and I know that when you canvass and when you get together, when you pull together, you can make them do almost anything when they see that you're not playing.
Well, there's two things that work with that mean something in politics, and that's either you have the money or you have the votes. And since we don't have the money, we have to organize the votes, and that's how we change things.
And that's what we're about. We do this because we know that in groups and in numbers, you can make a lot happen.
So tell us about your organization's scope in the last few minutes we have here.
So SCOPE stands for Strategic Concepts in Organizing and Policy Education. We've been in South LA for 25 years. A lot of our work is around economic and racial justice. Like Aretha has been saying, traditional jobs are like these good jobs that exist aren't accessible to a lot of our folks. So it's really important to create these training pipelines so that we can continue to stay in our community and continue to thrive and think about what it is we want to see and to take an active role in our community. So we do develop community leaders to advocate for themselves.
So basically, SCOPE is involved in trying to get the drills out of neighborhoods and bringing the jobs into the neighborhoods.
Yeah, you don't want people that drill oil, of course they're going to need to find a job once we get this done. I believe it's going to be done. So we want them to be able to transition to the green jobs. We don't want them to be without a job, but you can make just as much money with the green jobs as you do drilling oil, and in the community. Schools are there. There's too many
There's actually
danger
more.
signs there with what they're doing. At least get away from us to 25 Street, like she said.
Yeah.
Move away from us, or do something. We're gonna do something sooner or later. You know.
I've always had the impression that actually when you promote green industry, green jobs, you get more jobs than you do with fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
definitely.
So it's
definitely.
all around.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely an opportunity to have access for folks that don't have jobs or don't have access to good jobs to also be included in that economy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of barriers that keep people from getting regular traditional jobs. So.
Yeah, in Richmond, we had Richmond Build and trained a lot of people in solar panel installation, but we found most of them have to disperse throughout the Bay for other jobs because there's just not that much installation activity in Richmond, which is why we believe that the city of Richmond and other local governments ought to be investing in their solarizing all the public buildings, solarizing all the schools at a minimum,
Yeah, I
which
think-
would provide local jobs.
Investing in jobs, but also investing in the people, right, and in the community.
Yeah.
So a lot of those funds actually coming to the most impacted communities.
All right, so we'd like to thank you, Aretha Warmsleeve and Tracy Beltran from Scope down in South LA. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your work, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
And we are at the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice in San Francisco. And we have some more guests coming up for you. And the plaza is packed.
Yeah, everybody from the march is now getting here.
Everybody's still funneling in. It's a wonderful, colorful sight.
Oh yeah, beautiful flags.
And it's for beautiful causes. And our guests are coming now.
Yeah. So we have some of our friends from APEN here, the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, as well as Environmental Health Coalition. And so welcome. We have Pooja Hall, and we also have Carolina Martinez. All right. Well, welcome. Bienvenidos, both of you guys.
Thank you.
And so why don't we start with you, Pooja? Tell us about APEN's work in Richmond and especially the history of dealing with the Chevron refinery and the plans for the just transition.
Hi, I'm Pooja Hall. I'm with the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, also known as APEN. We've been around for 25 years, and we've been actively working with the Laotian community, organizing to fight against the Chevron refinery.
Richmond.
In Richmond. As you may know, in 2012, when the fire happened, 15,000 folks were sent to the hospital. So a lot of people in the front line, immigrant communities, refugees, people of color are affected by this. So in Richmond, in APEN, we've formed a coalition known as the Our Power Coalition. And through the Our Power Coalition, what we're trying to do is move from an extractive economy to a more regenerative economy. And what that means is giving people power in their own hands for ownership of their own businesses, growing their own food, owning their own electricity, solar panels, etc.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit more, like I was just mentioning actually with the last guest, that the Our Power Coalition and APEN and CB are promoting a new energy policy to create an actual energy commission in the city of Richmond. So would you care to comment on that? No, okay, we'll defer. So Carolina, welcome here, and
Thank you.
The Environmental Health Coalition
In San Diego.
In San Diego.
In San
So many
Diego,
people from
right?
all over the state.
I know.
And I understand you concentrate on transportation justice?
Yes, and so what we're seeing is that our policymakers are failing to represent our communities. When we know that more than 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions at the local level and state level come from transportation, and the policies that are being put in place to address climate are not addressing transportation, then we know they're failing. And so what we did in San Diego is we organized our community, we put forward an idea, and we said we need to reform the regional agency making transportation agencies. I'm making transportation solutions. And so after that reform, what's going to happen is that that'll allow people to transfer more funding to particularly the South Bay area in San Diego, so that we could actually see mass transit. And I think that the connection to APEN's work is that the fossil fuel industry is feeding the transportation system. And so we need to transform that, and we need to stop driving, and we need to focus on mass transit, both at the local level and at the state level, if we really want to address climate change in our communities.
And get rid of the internal combustion engines and switch to electrical.
Right, and so it starts with the fossil fuel industry and it continues with the transportation system. And it needs to move a lot of people very efficiently because people are not having the opportunity to get to jobs. And that happens a lot in San Diego. And so it's about jobs, it's about affordable housing, and it's also about a comprehensive solution because we need to make sure that we're seeing our communities as healthy communities in a bigger sense, and not just transportation or not just housing.
And how is that going to be accomplished politically in a community like the greater San Diego region, where you have a long history of the Navy, thus Republican conservative politics, but you also have a large historic Mexicano-Latino underclass that's been fighting for dignity and rights.
Well, the demographics are changing, and people are organizing, and people are realizing that going out to vote makes a big difference. And so we've been doing a lot of work making sure our folks know what the different policies that are being put in place are about. They're learning to be able to speak for themselves at city council meetings, something that we're not used to doing. So activating our communities to participate in the civic process, and from the elections to going to weekly meetings. And that's how we've been able to see change and actually letting our people speak for themselves and create solutions for themselves.
And so, Pooja, working in the city of Richmond for a number of years, what would the city of Richmond look like without Chevron?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So again, as mentioning the Our Power Coalition and a lot of the organizations that are part of the Our Power Coalition are working on their individual organizational components, and some of the things look like how to grow our own food, owning our own solar,
accessibility to bicycles.
Right, yeah, accessibility to bicycles, forming our own cooperative businesses, and giving people the power in their own hands to have that ownership, and not allowing bigger corporations to exploit people's power like that.
Sustainability and independence, self-sufficiency. Excellent.
And so, Catalina, you kind of spoke to where the future is going. What would San Diego look like without the Navy, or what would San Diego look like if you had a more just transportation system?
I think, for example, people are not able to access the technology. There is a big hub. There are big industries in San Diego, but they're not able to access those jobs because there is a divide. South of the 8, you'll see the big difference. People are not able to access that. So what it would look like, people would be able to access more jobs, but also create their communities the way they want them to be and not have an extractive economy. Having affordable housing is really, really important. We're seeing that a lot in Barrio Logan, in National City, in City Heights. And so we need to make sure that we put policies in place that have address rent increases. And so in National City, we're working to advance rent control. It's one of the few cities that is taking it to the ballot in November, and we feel very strongly about it.
So you guys are also supporting the repeal of Costa-Hawkins Prop 10?
Of course. It's really important that we make sure that when we advance environmental justice policies, we're also advancing affordable housing and protection of our communities.
Yeah, Richmond 2016 became the first city in 30 years to adopt rent control. But of course, it's limited by Costa-Hawkins, which is why we're all united on repealing it with Prop 10. Yeah. Well, Pooja, any last comments on where APEN is going to be going over the next 5 years in Richmond and Oakland?
Yeah, I think we're going to continue fighting until we are in a more regenerative process towards a more just transition economy, and we'll keep fighting until they give up.
All right, well, we will win.
We will win.
And the fight is everywhere. We're hearing today from Richmond and San Diego. all at the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice March and Rally in San Francisco, live on KPFA.org.
All right. Well, thank you, Pooja and Carolina, for coming here and sharing your stories with all the people. Thank you so much. And just like to remind you, this is a broadcast from the Rise for Climate here in San Francisco, September 8th, 2018. And we have people from literally all over the world here. And my name is Andres Soto, and I'm the host of the show, El Show de Andres Soto. And I'm joined on the air today by
Sharon Peterson, First Voice Apprenticeship Program.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, we have Cindy Weissner here, who's the National Coordinator for Grassroots Global Justice Alliance. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi, everybody. I am so happy to be here in the Bay Area. This used to be my home. And so I've come all the way from Miami to participate with the It Takes Roots delegation.
Yeah. Well, and who is the It Takes Roots delegation?
So It Takes Roots is 4 alliances, sister alliances, the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance, the Indigenous Environmental Network, Climate Justice Alliance, and the Right to the City Alliance, who have come together actually since the first march in 2014 in New York City, where we had the first People's Climate Mobilization.
Mm-hmm.
And so we came together as a slogan, as a banner called It Takes Roots to Weather the Storm. It was the name of the frontline contingent. And since then, we've been mobilizing together all the way from New York to Paris at the COP21 to Washington, D.C. last year to here as our contingent to mobilize and bring frontline leaders from all over the country, but also the world. We also have our global social movement partners that are here as well.
I was going to ask you, I know that there's an international component to this. What countries are represented here?
So we have compañeras y compañeros from Brazil, the different struggles, the landless people struggle, the MABI, the movement against dams, from the World March of Women. We have indigenous folks from also the Andean region, the Sariaku people, the folks that are fighting Chevron as well on their lands and territories. We have brothers and sisters from Africa, from Mozambique, from Kenya. We have some of our European social movement allies that are also part of the global struggle that are really trying to bring a systemic alternatives framework to the crisis we're facing, not only around climate, but the intersectional crises.
Well, and I also saw some Pacific Islander people.
That's right. Our brothers and sisters from Guam, Micronesia, Hawaii, that are also here, that are part of the international delegation. We've thought, even though this was local here in, the Global Climate Action Summit, we thought it was important because there's local communities all over the country, all over the world, and that there is something that has to be connected, because what we face may be different, but we have that common struggle and that common target.
So this may seem like a very obvious question, but how does feminism inform the climate change issues?
So we have a delegation here from the World March of Women, from the local groups here like Mujeres Unidas y Activas, but our sisters from all over the country who are very clear, because if we look at the impact in terms of, first hit, worst hit, we talk about frontline communities, but oftentimes that's women, that's gender nonconforming people, that's children, that's elders. And one of the things that we are bringing this week and have been doing the work is how do we actually talk about what does grassroots feminism articulation look like in terms of the climate crisis, right? Because if we understand climate being an economic issue, the root cause being capitalism, we have to understand the role of patriarchy in that, right? Exploitation, extraction are forms of actually not only taking that labor and that power from the land, but also from people. And we want to bring a feminist lens, a grassroots feminist lens, to our vision, right? So when we talk about just transition, we're articulating what does a just transition to a feminist economy look like? How do we center care? How do we talk about sharing? How do we talk about the reproductive labor that's necessary to give value to, rather than production and consumption and exploitation?
Well, and that's one of the things, whether it's one of the more advanced industrialized societies or even the rural economy societies, is woman's work is always undervalued and frequently not even paid. And that's at the core root of the exploitation.
That's right. That's right. And that's what we're trying to really bring, right? That exploitation and that relationship to land. You know, we have a patriarchal analysis of like how people take the way that our bodies are also commodified, and I think that's a piece of it where our work and our bodies are not valued and often invisibilized. And so that's there was a very loud batucada, which is we're trying to bring that batucada, the drumming, very feminist, fierce batucada that a lot of the women were playing drums. They made their own drums all week. They brought their children. They were all wearing purple. They're purple, and the slogan was defending our Mother Earth, defending our bodies, defending our planet.
Well, of course, that fits right into the show we saw this week with the confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh. And he clearly is a very dangerous person. What are some of your thoughts on that as we move forward? If this person is actually placed on the Supreme Court and decisions start coming down that will attack some of our fundamental rights, like those of privacy as articulated in the Roe v. Wade decision, what's the reaction?
Right. So first, a lot of shout out to all those people that have been mobilizing, that have been standing in line to get inside the hearing and protesting. Well, that's been a lot of women, a lot of working class folks. Mostly women. Yeah, mostly women that have been in there fighting, getting arrested. And so I want to shout them out because there's been a lot of folks also from labor and from folks like Jobs with Justice that have been organizing.
And folks with disabilities.
And that's right. That's right. And so I think that I think that we're clear on the political agenda of the Republican Party and this version of the Republican Party, and I think it's to draw, take us back several decades, all the gains that have been made, and I think it's dangerous, and I feel like part of what the struggle is the groundswell that has been building in the anti-Trump moment and in this political moment, and we know that we're going to fight tooth and nail to not have those rights rolled back. And in fact, we have to create more spaces. And what we're seeing from a national perspective is that the struggle is at the local level, at the statewide level, at the regional level, at the tribal level. And it feels like those are the spaces that we have to defend and create ground. And then I think fight like hell on the electoral front as well.
What I'm seeing is concerted efforts on the part of those who want to hold on to power.
Hey, we're out here.
Actually, that goes with what I was going to ask you.
That's right. For those of you who are not here, the Civic Center here has been taken over by people power, by all these activists and organizers, and from young to old. So there's a lot of music, a lot of celebration, a lot of painting. So those of you who can't come or just are close enough, get on that BART and get over here.
They are trying to divide us by race, by gender, by ability levels. It's not working anymore. And part of that is these coalitions such as yours.
That's right.
The groups are all coming together.
That's right. I think more than ever, I think we've realized that we have to aggregate our power. And not one sector, not one alliance or one organization is going to be able to push back and defend. And so for this moment, it's like we're saying we have to align, and we believe in a movement-building orientation of bringing people together, but not liquidating our differences differences, which I think is really key and important, and not going for the lowest common denominator, but it's actually saying, we actually say we have a critical analysis of the system right now, and more than ever we need bold, visionary opposition and ideas, and to capture the hearts and minds of people with all our alternatives. So what Soul to Soul is doing here is we're doing local tours from Richmond to the North Bay to Chinatown to Hunters Point. That's going to be tomorrow. On Monday, we're having an action, and on Tuesday, we're having a Soul to Soul Summit that we want to invite everyone to at La Raza Park from 10 o'clock in the morning to 7 p.m., where we're going to have cultural workers, we're going to have local community healing tents, young people activities, but really focusing on the solutions, really focusing on the alternatives, and being able to give our folks that hope that what we're facing right now is really messed up and very scary and can feel isolating, but by coming together across alliances, across peoples, across issues, to have that bigger vision is what's going to get us out of this mess.
And then the confrontation with Global Climate Summit.
That's right. That's going to happen on the 13th, 7 a.m. So look out for ittakesroots.org. Join us on the streets, and we're so happy to have you. And I'm a longtime fan of KPFA, so hello to all the folks out here in the Bay Area and listening across the nation.
All right, Cindy Wiesner from Global Justice Alliance.
Grassroots Global Justice.
Grassroots Global Justice.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Right.
And things are still really active here at the Rise for Climate Jobs and Justice Rally Point in San Francisco. We've got flowers on our table. We've got music in the air.
All right.
And
so
we got lots of people. Lots of people. It's
all right.
full.
So
and we have some more guests on the way.
Yeah, so just like to remind you that this is KPFA, kpfa.org, and KPFA 94.1 FM. You all know the station. And we're down here with the
First Voice Apprenticeship Program and Andres Soto.
Yeah, and I host my own program every Thursday afternoon. El Show de Andres Soto, and I like to tell the story of the folks in Richmond and the larger East Bay, as well as the environmental justice struggle. And we have a couple of leaders of the pioneer of the environmental justice struggle. Jihan, thank you so much. From how you been?
Yeah, hey, I've been doing great.
I'm
happy. I'm hyped up.
And she's from Black Mesa Water Coalition. And we also have
Luis Benali, also from White Mesa.
All right. So one of the things we're asking folks today is, people are coming from across the country and across the world to be here today to bring issues forward. How are your issues where you guys live? What are you bringing here, and what are you trying to help build here?
Mm-hmm. I think we're here in solidarity of the struggle throughout the world, because our earth is in crisis due to our greed. So somehow we must, cut the ties there the best way we can by educating and then putting the right people in place so they can make that change for us. We hope, however, we also have to do our own direct action in our home fronts, because we depend on the earth to survive day to day, every day, and we're impacted by fracking, gas and oil development, coal development, uranium, and the theft of water and land, sacred sites. So we're impacted by all those, and we do know that all other indigenous people are facing those same issues, and we're here in solidarity with the world, throughout the world, for people where they're fighting for environmental justice and the survival of our lives, all of us and our future generations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Jihan.
Yeah, and I think as this larger movement keeps talking about just transition, I think it's really important, like Louise said, that indigenous communities are there to give our point of view, because really, like, for example, in California, everyone's talking about natural gas, like, oh, that's the transition from coal to natural gas. And so then for us on the Navajo Nation, it means less coal mining, or maybe even continued coal mining, and now, in addition to that, natural gas fracking. So it's just we're still, it's like whatever resources is needed is being taken from our homelands. And I think that's such an important perspective to bring. And another thing that Indigenous people bring is knowledge and teachings and spirituality that's connected to this place called America. And I think across the country and sometimes even in our own movements, Native people are really invisibilized, you know, kind of put to the side or not recognized or not thought of. And Indigenous communities bring so much knowledge about how to live on the land, so much knowledge about what is changing. People now are feeling the impacts of climate change, but Native people have been feeling those impacts for decades now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we're in the forefront in those ways, and I think for us and at the Black Mesa Water Coalition, one of the things that we're really trying to do, being younger people who weren't really necessarily brought up super traditionally, is really to try and relearn those things and re-understand these things and try to practice these things, because I think that's how we're going to survive.
Well, let me ask you guys this. I mean, you're located in primarily Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the dual burden of having to deal with the federal government if you're on the reservation, but you're also within the political context of Arizona, which is got some of the most right-wing Republican conservative kind of representatives anywhere in the country. I mean, Joe Arpaio. I mean, it's so explain maybe for people who are, say, here in the Bay Area who don't understand what that kind of struggle is, to have that kind of blatant right-wingism in your face. What's that experience like?
Well, if you allow assholes to control your daily lives, you know, you're torn by it. If you don't recognize and be, you know, yourself as an Indigenous person living one with the earth, those don't affect you. So, however, we do see the destruction of our world because of people that have no conscience. And these are people that never, ever had to do anything on their own. Everything's given to them. So they don't have a sense of being a human, or even have a sense of, you know, thinking about people's survival altogether. So we're dealing with unconscious zombies. That's how I see that whole agenda.
Yeah, and there's actually a map somewhere in the Arizona State Capitol that has kind of their map and their plan for what Arizona was. And in our reservation, which is actually in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, it's just black and it just says coal. So it's like, you know, from the very beginning that they were planning to just take resources from that area in order to build these big cities in the Southwest. Otherwise, there's no way they could have possibly been built. And I think that mentality has completely carried forward this kind of like dominance over nature. So, hey, let's build a giant city in the middle of the desert with no resources, and let's have pools and golf courses, and everyone, it's too hot, so let's blast the air conditioning. It's this whole mentality that's about patriarchy, it's about dominance, and it's about white supremacy, and it started way back then.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for sharing that with us. And what are your future plans, like in the next 5 to 10 years? What are you guys working on to build?
Grow more food, restore the watersheds, and our main goal is to outvote these people that have no conscience.
And I would say, for me, something I'm going to add on there is like really strengthening the matriarchy, because I feel like one of the things that happened with a lot of tribal nations is during the colonization processes, we've also been taught patriarchy, and we are naturally a matriarchy, and I think strong women are acknowledged, but very little of our tribal government leaders are women, very little of the department heads are women, it's all these men, right? And I think that's been very limiting for our people, because it's also been a complete clash with our culture, which is then kind of making us rely on these larger systems of colonization and capitalism.
I'm so worried about the Supreme Court, because if Kavanaugh gets elected, the 5 conservatives are all Catholic males, and there's nothing more patriarchal than the Catholic Church. I mean, the Pope. They call him Papa, right?
Yeah.
So,
yep. 100.
yeah, so it's going to be a very dangerous situation with that kind of conservative Catholic domination.
I think as far as that goes, the Supreme Court has always been a racist, supremacist organization that has made final decisions on all the cases. So as far as I am concerned, you know, there is no justice in that so-called system for indigenous people. So we only have one thing that we can say we have justice from, or two things, that's our earth and our sun, and those are our rulers, and that's who we have to continue to acknowledge to live by in that form of order for life, instead of recognizing all these people that are so messed up to be ruling over us.
Well, those are words of wisdom there. And so we have Jihan Duran, and we also have
Louise Benali.
Louise Benali. Thank you so much from the Dene Tribe and the Navajo Nation and from Black Mesa Water Coalition. Thank you guys so much for being here, sharing your knowledge and experience with us, and thank you and welcome to the Bay Area again.
I thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I thank you as well, and I must say I'm starting to think in a different way about the borders. I do not like them, but now I'm beginning to see what they should be rather than what they are.
Right.
That's very important.
Well, if history has shown us anything, is that
Divide and conquer,
all
right? That's their
borders are
strategy.
temporary.
Yes.
Well, thank you both. Have a great time.
Thank you.
And we are at the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice Rally Point in San Francisco. This is KPFA.org, First Voice Apprenticeship Program, and I'm with
Andres Soto.
And I'm Sharon Peterson, and I am about to leave the mic to Kat Petru.
Kat's not yet ready, so I guess you might have to stick around a little bit there.
And she'll be with us in a moment. She'll be with us momentarily as we await our guests.
And as you can tell over here at the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice, is that this is quite a festive atmosphere. We have a whole lot of folks that are out here playing music, doing art, and this is being brought to you live by Bright Path Video, and you can catch them at brightpathvideo.com. And John Perulis is the producer. For more information, you can go to info@brightpathvideo.com, and they do live streaming media. So thank you so much, Bright Path Video, for being here and doing the live streaming. And so we're looking for our next guest to come up, and we have Candy White from the Indigenous Environmental Network. And as soon as we can get Candy over here, we'll set her down.
Okay, and first we have a shout out for an event tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Chrissy Field in San Francisco, Hummingbird Rising, Human Mandala for Climate Justice, with performances of music, with speakers, indigenous speakers, a human banner flash mob, and a mind travel experience. Sunday, September 9th, 4 p.m., Chrissy Field, San Francisco.
And remember, this is KPFA.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, this is KPFA.org, as well as KPFA 94.1 FM in Berkeley. And once again, I'd like to welcome to this broadcast Candy White from the Indigenous Environmental Network. Welcome, Candy.
Thank you. That was me doing a sound check. Sorry about that.
It's live.
All right.
All the way live.
All right.
Yeah, so tell us about the Indigenous Environmental Network and where you come from and how you got here today.
All right. How much time do we have?
About 12 minutes.
So IEN, we've been around since 1990, sort of born under the American Indian movement, really taking and continuing on the work that was happening, but continuing in a way where there's education around what is environmental injustice, what is climate justice, what does all this stuff mean that's happening in our communities. So I started with IEN about 11 years ago now already. And so...
Well, you look so young.
Well, thank you. I'm from North Dakota, so Dosha, Maraguats, Marashima'a, Ishuia Hits. In my Herada language, I said hello relatives. My name is Eagle Woman, My English name is Candy White, recently married, formerly Candy Mossett. And like I said, Amanda and Heradza Rikra grew up in North Dakota, grew up on the Fort Berthold Reservation, and I'm a cancer survivor, had all these things around me always happening. People were always sick, and I just thought that was normal, you know, until I left the res, and all these people were like, how come everybody's sick? So I start questioning that, and like, dang, this doesn't happen to everybody? You know, this is just like brown people and black people, you know? And then that's when I started realizing that there's terminology around it about what's happening to us. And so I started getting involved in natural resource and park management, environmental management, and took off from there and started learning that there are people that make decisions on our behalf that aren't necessarily good people. They only care about money, you know, they only care about the bottom line. They don't care that our babies can't breathe, you know, they don't care that we're sick. They don't care that we're dying. And so
I don't think they even love their own children or grandchildren.
They don't love themselves.
They have to share this world.
That's right.
They do seem to love causing pain. They actually do seem to enjoy that.
It's called sadism.
Yeah.
They're very uneducated. That's how I feel about number 45. I feel like they're really dangerous people because they don't understand where they come from. They've lost their own blood memory. They've lost their own culture. And that's dangerous because if you don't have a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of where you came from, you don't care about where you're going. That's what makes them so dangerous.
And so what are some of the history of the Indigenous Environmental Network, and what have been some of your current campaigns or actions?
Well, we've been working a lot on all of these carbon trading schemes that they've been trying to do, these carbon market schemes. And so this Global Climate Action Summit.
Cap and trade.
Yeah. This was called together by Governor Jerry Brown and all those that are invested in cap and trade. It's based on emissions trading schemes. So what does that even mean? How does that relate to people on the ground?
It means they've turned pollution into a commodity.
Yeah, they basically buy and sell pollution. Instead of keeping fossil fuels in the ground, not developing oil, not developing coal, and like causing a climate crisis, they want to see how, for example, they can buy a credit. So they're going to save a rainforest in the Amazon. They're going to fence off a section of the Amazon, and then the local indigenous people can't go in there no more. They're not even allowed to be in there, but they're saving it. Or they cut it all down, and then they build like monocrop plantations, palm oil. And then they say, oh, we planted trees after they destroyed the rainforests, right? And then those trees are counted for the certain amount of carbon that they're going to suck up over their lifetime. And it's like, theoretically, right? Like California is on fire half of the time, and are they counting all the carbon that's going back into the air when these trees burn down? No, they're not counting that. So they buy a credit, and then North Dakota can continue with our 9 coal-fired power plants, for example. They can pollute X amount because somebody bought a credit from a forest that they either, in theory, saved or planted a tree for. And so the devil's in the details when it comes to all these projects around REDs or forest guardians or people that really truly believe this is going to bring good economy to their homelands. And we've seen it over the past 12 years. You know, it's not like we even have to make any of the stories up. You can talk to the folks from the Amazon. You can talk to the folks from Ecuador and Brazil that have been directly impacted, and you can hear their stories about how they're being targeted. They're dying. And then they meet us. Oh, shoot, you guys are dying too because of the pollution end of it? Oh, shoot, we should get together and connect. And that's what we've been doing as IEN. And that's why we're here at GCAS, because they make it look pretty. You can go to their website, you know, Global Climate Action Summit, big wind turbines spinning, and it's all great. Well, no, we're talking about localized, sustainable, small-scale wind, small-scale solar, community gardens, bringing back the blood memory, that which makes us remember who we are. And you can't do that until you're reconnected with the land. That's what it's about. And I see how they get disconnected in the city. There's so much cement, you know, there's so many buildings. You don't necessarily even have to walk on grass on a daily basis. That's the problem. Too many people are disconnected from who we are as humanity and as human beings. We're a part of her. We say the mother because that's literally what every single cell in our body is made of. Our water, everything within us comes from the earth. And it's so funny how scientists are catching up now. They're like, did you know that if you stand on a patch of grass, all your body elements start like shifting around and you feel good. If you stand by a tree, you feel better, and it's like, really? This is called traditional ecological knowledge or common sense.
Can you quantify that?
I know, right? So science is working to catch up to what we've known, for a long time as Native people. And I get it though. Colonization and capitalism seeks to control people. It seeks to brainwash people. Turn your TV on and believe that consumerism is the only thing there is. But there's this whole supply and demand with carbon markets and carbon trading. They want us to believe that we need what they say we need. You need to have a gas-guzzling vehicle. Well, how come they even make them if we know they're killing us?
Right.
Why doesn't every single household only have access to plug-in electric hybrid vehicles that they can plug into their own solar panel at their own house? Because nobody's going to make the money off of that if I have my own solar panel and I'm plugging it in and getting the energy from the wind.
It's just like
the sun.
why are we distributing instruments of war under the guise of self-defense? It's ludicrous.
The history of wars revolves around oil.
Right.
You're giving me a whole new picture of the term power grid. Grid as in rectangles, borders, binding us up.
That's right. And they want us to stay connected to the grid because that's how they control the power and the money. That's how they know who has to pay for what. But we're getting to the point where people ask me, well, what are we really talking about here? In California at GCAS, we're talking about survival. I mean, we can't be beating around the bush anymore. We're literally talking about whether we as humanity are going to be smart enough to come together collectively and save ourselves, or we're all going to go down together.
Which then leads us to Monday and the direct action. We got a couple minutes left. 2 minutes.
So out at the Park Hotel, we're going to be going to direct action 8 a.m. You guys come on out and join us. We're meeting outside the Governor Forest.
Where's the Park Hotel?
55 Park Avenue is what I want to say. I'm going to double check that, but you can check it out on ittakesroots.org.
Okay.
And see our schedule. Come on out for that on the 10th and also on the 13th. Mass action, mass mobilizations for all those people that couldn't get into the meeting because you have to be accredited to go in there,
Right. It's exclusive club.
That's right. But they're making decisions on our behalf. So you come on out and you support us. Check us out at ittakesroots.org. But really go to ienearth.org and read our carbon pricing book. It's broken down so that it's an easier to understand language, and you get a sense of the history of how long they've been doing this to us without maybe you even knowing about it.
Yeah. So those are words of wisdom as well as advice from Candy White with the Indigenous Environmental Network. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with all the folks.
Matzigirads, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
And once again, this is KPFA.org, First Voice Apprenticeship Program at Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice.
All right, and so we're going to be taking a music break, and so we got to say adieu, adios.
Goodbye, so long, farewell.
Yeah, check y'all out later. And I'm Andres Soto, and host of El Show de Andres Soto every Thursday from 3:30 till 4 o'clock on KPFA.
And I'm Sharon Peterson with the First Voice Apprenticeship Program.
And we're going to turn it over to the capable hands of Kat and Dennis.
What's up? This is Kat Petru of the First Voice Apprenticeship Program with KPFA, coming to you live from the Rise for Climate March for Jobs and Justice here at the Civic Center in San Francisco. And I'm honored to be sitting next to...
This is Dennis Bernstein from the Flashpoints team at KPFA Pacifica. And I'm honored to be here with you and with the thousands of folks who have gathered to stand up and to put their body where their beliefs are. It's a beautiful day here, glittering sunny day, a bit of a breeze in the air in front of City Hall, and incredible actions taking place, a lot of painting.
So much beautiful artwork. Even people dressed all in green like fairies, literally matching the trees that line this plaza in front of City Hall. It's really, really beautiful. And the song you just heard is Believe in Reality by Alicia Fukushima. Thanks so much to the First Voice crew for choosing that beautiful track to get us going today. So Dennis and I are seated in front of Ariel Deranger with Indigenous Climate Action. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, Eklanete, Dene is Sotlane, Ariel Tseekwe.
There's also lots and lots of wonderful music here.
Yeah, so my My name is Ariel Tseekwe Deranger, and I'm a member of the Athabasca Chippewan First Nation, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Indigenous Climate Action, which is Canada's leading Indigenous-led and climate justice organization.
Thank you so much for being here. What does it mean to you to be from unceded territory up north to be here on occupied land in Turtle Island and being part of this march today?
Well, I actually come from the Treaty 8 territory, so there has been a treaty agreement for our territory. So, we have dealt with colonization for a long time. My community, Fort Chippewan, it was a fur trading post for many, many generations. So we really felt colonization right at the very beginning. And it's really an inspiring thing to be able to come and have the opportunity and the privilege to come as a member of my nation from so far away in Treaty 8 territory in northern Alberta, where my community is a fly-in only community. There's no roads to where we live, and to come and share the stories of my community. And there's a direct connection to California. So my nation and my territory is home to the largest industrial project on planet Earth, the Alberta tar sands. And the tar sands are continuing to grow every single year, regardless of international climate commitments or the words of our leaders in our country talking about taking action, and including leaders like Jerry Brown talking about taking real climate action. We're still talking about importing Alberta's tar sands to the California coast. So the largest ever proposed tar sands project, Tech Frontier, is supplying oil to the proposed Trans Mountain pipeline. And that pipeline takes Alberta's oil to the coast, west coast of Canada, and then it gets shipped down through large tankers down the west coast to Richmond, California, to be refined and to add insult to injury to those communities already seeing those impacts. So for me, I have a direct linkage that's both powerful and overwhelming to be here and to be able to stand with my brothers and sisters all along those pipeline corridors and in the refinery communities.
Absolutely. Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, people see climate change, global warming as something that's going to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But the folks in Canada and the Indigenous communities throughout this region in northern the United States and Canada are experiencing this now. They're losing their lifestyles, their very place to live.
Yeah.
This is not in the future anymore.
It's definitely not in the future. In Canada, we talked about international commitments of keeping global temperatures 2 degrees below pre-industrial levels. But in northern Canada, we're already seeing us butt up against that at about 1.6, 1.8 degrees change. And that has resulted in a lot of northern communities, and my communities just south of the 60th parallel, where we're seeing lower precipitation through all the seasons, including winter. And that means less frost, less ice, and that's a really critical component to our everyday culture and our lives. Not having a road, like a paved road to our community, means we use ice roads. With decreasing winters, warmer seasons, we're seeing our ability to access our lands and territories in the wintertime decreasing more and more every year because of unstable ice and ground. We're also seeing this compound our ability and accessibility to our lands and territories with higher temperatures, lower precipitation, and our rights are really, really being impacted in a real way. Our food sources are disappearing, our clean water is disappearing, and it's a reality. Climate change is happening now.
And it's happening now. We hear a lot about the government of Canada as being a liberal government. How are they doing there at the top? Or is that a stupid question?
Well, right now, I think if you're watching Canadian politics, the Trudeau government just bought the largest capacity pipeline in the country, the Trans Mountain pipeline, utilizing $10 billion of Canadian money, like taxpayer everyday money, to purchase an ailing pipeline that's being opposed by First Nations, by mayors, municipalities, and environmentalists alike. And here we are talking about calling Trudeau a climate leader. He's not a climate leader. He's a climate offender.
Absolutely, that was not a stupid question. I'm laughing because I think I'm laughing because in sort of the neoliberal culture that we're in here in the United States, there is this presumption that Jerry Brown and Trudeau and the like are doing the right thing, and so I'm just really appreciative of the way that you're illustrating through describing the conditions at the tar sands and the relationship between there and Richmond. The reality of the fact that, as Dennis said, this isn't something that's happening in the future. Climate change is now, and the urgent need to take radical. People get turned off by that term, to just take action. You can't, as Noam Chomsky said, you can't be neutral on a moving train. So can you tell us more about
Indigenous.
Thank you. Indigenous climate action.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what you all do?
Yeah, so with Indigenous climate action, our whole mandate is to support and uplift Indigenous voices in the climate movement and to support Indigenous-led climate action and solutions that are really coming from the front lines and from the grassroots. It's super important because, as we're seeing here with the Global Climate Action Summit, is that those voices are not being represented in developing these so-called solutions that are really created to support business as usual and capitalism and pipelines and tar sands and refineries, and further marginalizing communities and putting our health and our safety at risk. And so Indigenous communities are looking at also developing solutions that are grounded in our culture, in our identities, in the protection and preservation of the places that fostered our cultures and our identities. Indigenous lands and territories the world over encompass 80% of the world's biodiversity, and yet we're excluded from the development of solutions to address the climate crisis. Like, we have been addressing the climate crisis since colonization. So those solutions are grounded in reframing what solutions are. It's challenging capitalism, it's challenging colonialism, it's challenging patriarchy, and it's about reconnecting humanity and our communities with the lands, with the territories, with our language. And those solutions become so beautiful. They become about language. They become about, relationship building with the land. They come about medicines. They become about humanity rather than capitalism.
We're about to wrap it up here, but in the last minute that we have, could you tell a lot of young people here, and a lot of very young people here who are participating, why do you suppose it's important for the young people to be sort of on the cutting edge of this movement?
I think it's absolutely critical for young people to be here. It's their future. It's their future that needs to be protected. It's them that are going to be taking over the reins from these psychotic leaders that we have right now. So we need our people to see the reality and to understand what's at risk so that they can develop real solutions that move us away from the trajectory we're currently on.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Dennis.
No.
Thank you so much, Ariel Deranger from Indigenous Climate Action up in Alberta with the tar sands in Canada. It's been such a pleasure to hear what you're up to, and thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much.
Very important work that you're doing. Thank you. And very important work that the Apprentices are doing here downtown San Francisco in front of City Hall. Tens of thousands of folks have gathered. You know what's amazing about this event? That I've been to a lot of them. I've been around a bit. And usually when we're here, there's, if you're lucky, there's 5,000 or 10,000 people standing looking forward at a stage.
Right.
And maybe they hear 6 or 7 people give beautiful speeches, and then everybody goes home. But here, many beautiful things are happening. And it's happening sort of in a circle. People are meeting each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really curious. This event was organized by 350.org, and it's a huge, huge organization. And that's just a conversation I'd love to have at some point about the ethics of their organizing and how they mobilize such a wide range of individuals and organizations and groups to come together. And it seems like they thought a lot of very important elements through, in particular grounding this with decolonization, with centering Indigenous women, Indigenous grandmothers kicking off the march with prayer, touching the ground, genuinely acknowledging the fact that we're all of this earth, whether we are indigenous to this land here or not, and we need to reckon with that.